And another portion of the property is to also aggregate ancillary businesses like Cody's, like Keith's, and others that might be interested in saving money on their logistics. This is a commoditized crop, and the industrial hemp space has taken an opposite approach to the cannabinoid hemp space, where cannabinoids started high, everyone built their business model up here, and it kind of has gone down. The industrial hemp has started with, this is reasonably what we can afford to pay farmers to get actual finished products at a price that's affordable as well. And so I think with this opposite approach, being close to the source is going to play a big role. And that's a big piece of the puzzle we're trying to put together here at Kifcure. I think some of the different concepts around how logistics are happening with hemp is always a concern, especially in the cannabinoid space. Can you tell us, Keith, a little bit about how the logistics are affecting your business and how the transport issues maybe lessened by some of this regulation change that we kind of addressed before, and sort of what all of this means for you?
Or in a broad stroke, I'd say, because you are so involved in the Texas hemp market, how it is affecting others in your region here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of processors here. I think it's all going to be processing facilities. We need the really good processing facilities, the $5 to $7 million processing facilities that can go to every aspect of this plant. You can get your herd, you can get everything. With me out here, I'm basically I get most of my stuff outside of Texas through Colorado, because that's where I've lived and started this industry. So I get most of my products out of Colorado. Here in Texas, I'm just now getting in with them, but I'm getting in more to the industrial side with that. I still make my medicines, but I'm learning the building techniques, the oil absorption techniques. They have the hemp socks now made from the herd that will absorb the oil before it will absorb the water in water, so it cleans. They're really using that here. That's one of the biggest ones that the processing facility in Houston uses. And that's what they make. But I think the key is to have these processing centers everywhere, all around, so that, like you said, the farmers can get involved. They have contracts in place where they can have what they're growing. They know what they're going to get out of it, so they know what to do, and then they can get their carbon credits. And for me right now, like I said, I still work with a lot of the old people that I worked with in Colorado, because I trust where it comes from. I have a few people here in Texas, but like I said, mainly I'm working with the building people here with the industrial.
Thanks. Cody, how are logistics affecting your business? It's heavy, it's big. What are you doing about it?
Yeah, so that's the missing piece of the puzzle for me. Like with the building materials that I'm using and integrating into buildings, the cost is mostly like 40% of my cost of my material is all shipping right now. Mm-hmm. So having that processing facility that knows what they're making and they have end markets for it is going to be super critical to getting this into the mainstream. And in Michigan, we're going to need 6 to 7 of those just with the size of our state. And then having that focus of like what the end markets are is going to be super important. So when you're growing for herd production or grain production, it's going to be a lot different than if you're growing for textiles. So I think having the full supply chain is definitely going to improve the ability for this material to go mainstream and have a lot more end uses, and then create a much more sustainable economy and a lot more agricultural economy too. Yeah.
How are you dealing with?
Make it easier for the farmer for sure, man. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's processing facilities. They need to go up everywhere, and they have to have the full spectrum of processing.
Yeah, and I know the universities are working towards this to try and, I mean, it's one of the biggest, when you're talking industrial, it's one of the biggest challenges that we face, because we have it's such a heavy and cumbersome product that really isn't worth much more than you are paying for the shipping companies to transport it. Mm-hmm. So, or your own folks transporting it with the cost of diesel and everything else. So yes, it is one of the biggest challenges that we are faced here in the industrial fiber and industrial grain segment. Cannabinoids a little less, even though it is still a big concern, but you know, you can cram a lot more dollar value into a 53-foot van than you can on a flatbed step deck trailer when you're hauling fiber. So how do we fix that? Like Keith was saying, and Cody, we need to regionalize these processing facilities, these intake facilities, utilize other modes of transportation other than something you need to put diesel into. So, for example, like rail
for sure, yeah,
or even waterway. So,
Mhm.
and I'm very encouraged to see a lot of these new industries starting to adapt hemp as a more than a viable alternative to some other traditional materials. Everything that we're seeing from cotton, it's affecting the cotton industry because make some awesome clothing materials, fabrics, so forth. The construction materials, which, as you mentioned, they haven't gotten cheaper over. I mean, the cost of wood, the cost of concrete, and not to mention concrete is one of the most polluting processes of any material known to man. Making concrete creates, I think, like 8% of the global carbon footprint, which is mind blowing when you think of all these other things that we're doing, like burning coal and so just being able to, and that kind of goes back to the carbon credits, carbon footprint, carbon insets. So I think that's where the whole conversation gets really interesting, because you have your offsets, like companies like American Airlines or ExxonMobil. Well, they have a lot of carbon, they're carbon polluters, but so they're having to buy these carbon offsets. But what about carbon insets? So carbon insets would be an example of using for the end user to be using these products that make a carbon that basically reduce the carbon footprint, and that would be things like using bioplastics instead of petroleum plastics. And we do that here at Emerald Acres, our bar. We use hemp straws and hemp paper. Well, that's a carbon inset. We're not using wood paper, and we're not using petrochemical plastic straws. We're using hemp plastic straws. So starting to look at those things, and I believe that there's going to be a big compelling reasons monetarily to make these switches.